Hello, friends. For those of you I haven't had the pleasure to meet yet, my name is Dr. Nick Rorrer, but please just call me Nick. And I currently serve as the fraternity's 50th national president. I use he/him pronouns, and I'm originally from the Eta Beta chapter at Virginia Tech. I'm super excited for these chop shops. I'm super excited to see so many of y'all here today across the country, earning your chapter a Crown Pearl Gold, possibly one of your first ones. So I'm super happy to be here talking about president, especially as national president. I felt like it was appropriate that I joined the president's chat tonight. So I'm very tonight and on Wednesday. Today is Monday. So I'm very excited to do that, and I'm very excited to be joined by Jack.
All right. Thanks, Nick and Kristen. Yeah, my name is Jack Gornick. I am a member of the Founder Circle speaking team. I am an alum from Alpha Zeta at Indiana University, and I served as district VPM and president my junior and senior year just a few years ago. I am unfortunately now further out of college than I was in it, which is a sad truth to find. But I'm excited to be here and glad to be talking about president. Without any further ado, then. So, we're going to talk over four main different topics today. So, first, we're going to start with just you and your individual organization as president. Second, building chapter culture and your role as president within that. Then, looking a little bit beyond the chapter and looking at sponsor and DOB, as well as university relations and how those relationships should look with you as president. And then finally, finishing with some national expectations, some OPUS support, and additional resources that you can use along your path as president. So, kicking it off with the individual organization. So, question here that we're going to look through for the next few slides is just how can you be at your best as president before getting into the entire year ahead of you? And so, first thing that I want to start with here is that being president isn't about being perfect. It's not about having all the answers. It's about striving for your highest. And that can look different every day. That's going to look different for every person. It's just what is it that you can do to be the best version of you within this role? And part of it's simply just understanding what the role of president is and helping other people understand what their role is and how they fit into the chapter as well. So, like your chapter will function at its best when not just you, but your exec board, committee chairs, and every brother within the chapter have a very clear understanding of their roles and you have an understanding of your role. And that just helps people perform at their best. And it often does start with you leading the way and showing what it means to be a strong member or a strong brother of this chapter. And so a few tips and tricks that you can do to help just get up to speed and start as a chapter officer. First, just go through all of your chapter documents and transition documents as well. Hopefully your last president left you a nice packet. You can also look at documents like this, the presentation that you can look at here to just be familiar with the role, as well as just go through all of your key chapter resources. Make sure you're familiar with your bylaws and perhaps your folder organization structure, just like knowing all of the ins and outs of being a member of the chapter, a member of the exec board will help you just go a long way in just having that foundation of your role. Second, think on your expectations for chapter communication and accountability. And we're going to talk a little bit more about accountability as well within this workshop, but think about what that really means and looks like for you and your chapter. How do you want to communicate with your exec board? How do you want to communicate with every brother in the chapter? How do you want to get feedback back from them and hear from them about how you exec are doing, how what the chapter needs? And also think about what it does mean to be accountable to your role and your responsibilities. Uh, Something that we can talk about and we can touch later on more is accountability is something that everybody has to be keeping in mind. Like we all have responsibilities regardless of role. It very well may be your responsibilities as a brother as set out by the ritual and thinking through consistently how we are living up to that on a day-to-day basis. Like truly, besides just the role of president, how are you showing up as a brother? Goes a long way into just setting you up to be successful in this role. And two things that we do want to talk about before getting into some more of the nitty gritty. Presidents isn't often an easy role. Like there are definitely gonna be challenges throughout the year, not just within the fraternity, but we all go through stuff outside of it as well. I've had many people tell me that Kappa Kappa Psi has it can be like at best your fourth most high priority because like we're all students first or professionals first. We all have friends and family, and we all have our own well-being to look out for. So self-care does become important throughout the year, just to make sure that you are protecting yourself just as a human first, because again, we are all human. And so I want to hear from a couple people here. You feel free to put in the chat or come off mute. Like, what are some things that you have already done or perhaps could do throughout this year to just to take care of yourself as a brother, as a person? And again, feel free to throw anything in the chat or just come off mute. No KKSI after 8 p.m. Yeah, most night. Yeah,
One
Nick,
thing
you're gonna
that
blow right past that tonight. Sorry, somebody come off mute.
one thing that I did last semester that helped a lot was request that the brothers kept communication for Kappa Kappa Psi in one channel. We used to
Mm,
have like we used Remind, we used Discord, we used email, and we used like personal text threads. And it got
mm,
really stressful to try to keep track of questions that everybody had coming in from like multiple different avenues. So that was
yeah.
like a kind of a simple, like a pretty simple ask on everybody's part to just keep things streamlined. And it really helped me feel like I had like I could just check one place, and then if everything was there was taken care of, I knew that I was good, didn't have anything to do.
Mhm.
That helped a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Just not being completely inundated by communications all the time. I'd also add on top of that having yeah, just similar to the no KKSI after 8 p.m., just having time to decompress and not check those messages, not feel the need to respond to everything that you get at 11 at night or whenever somebody might put something in one of those chats, right? So making the time for it, and as a couple of these things that are coming in the chat, step back for a second to breathe, schedule in some breaks. Um, let's see, was somebody raising their hand here? I couldn't tell. If not, we can go through a few more here. Um, yeah, Jamie, asking for help. That's something that we can talk about a little bit more later on here. But I think the name of the game for this, for self-care long term, is delegation. You don't have to be the one doing everything yourself. In fact, if you are the person doing everything yourself, that's probably not a very sustainable thing for your chapter, not just this year, but after that as well, because nobody's learning how to fill your shoes after that too. If you can find people that you can rely on and look at your exec board as the first line there to empower them to take on some roles or some tasks that the chapter needs to have complete, and encourage them to even take that a step further and to delegate to their teams, like if they have committees or chairs underneath them, like having this cascading effect almost of just encouraging everybody to empower the people around them to take on whatever it is that may be needed, I think goes a really long way into keeping a broader amount of the chapter engaged, which is going to help you perform better as a chapter and just as people, as we just again all have a lot going on at times, and we need to take moments for ourselves. Anybody else have anything to come off mute with, or Nick, Chris, and anything in the chat that you want to call on?
I think one thing I'll jump in on is one thing I always want to remind people of, and we kind of so some of these slides, if you were on the Opus session, are a little familiar for that, and that's because some of these things overlap. But one of the things I said when we talk about self-care is I always encourage people to know the difference between self-care and basic care, right? Remembering to shower today or to do stuff like that is great. I don't always succeed in it. I try my best because I can smell. But just please remember, like, at minimum, you have to take care of yourself. Like Kappa Kappa Psi is not worth staying up till 4 a.m. for and missing your 8 a.m. class, and missing a quiz for that class. Like you are a college student first, as Jack said kind of earlier, but you also have to like take care of yourself because if you can't take care of yourself, you can't take care of your team and you can't build a strong team. But then also find those moments, like especially as you might be feeling you're getting to burnout or something like that, where maybe you do kind of the little plus up of self-care. Personally, I don't need boba every day, but when I'm in my feelings, I get boba. So I really like emphasize like please do the basic care, take care of yourself, but then also elevate it when you need to do kind of some of those self-care practices.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Nick. All right. Well, we can circle back to this more if people have more things put in the chat as well, but we can keep moving. Other thing that we want to talk about here, just as more foundations of being a president, is setting SMART goals. So I'm guessing most of you have heard SMART goals at this point, but it's really just about being intentional about setting goals that you can really achieve and make it more likely for you to achieve goals. So instead of having very vague or just broad goals, having things that are specific, have a little bit of detail baked into it, you can actually measure and track against to show that you are attaining it, which means it is attainable. Uh, Goals that are also just realistic within the scope of your role, within the scope of the chapter and the resources that you have, and also having it be timely, having some timeline to actually measure against. All of these things together in a goal will help you actually be way more likely to achieve it and to see positive results, because it's instead of saying something very vague like we want to be more productive in meetings, which is something that I think most chapters probably want to do, like perhaps making that a little bit more of a SMART goal of saying, you know what, we want to keep all of our meetings to within the hour or hour 15 or whatever it is time frame that we have allotted to it. We can do that by creating agendas and sticking to it. We can have people actually tracking that and timing that. It can be something that can actually be fairly realistic if we stick to it, and we don't have to get it perfectly today. We can work towards that throughout the year. That's a simple example of just being a little bit more specific about how you can actually achieve different things. And one thing that's helpful at the beginning of the year, I think, for presidents is to talk about your goals and the goals of other people around you, perhaps on people on your exec board, all your officers. Go through and just talk about what you want to achieve this year, like, and really push to make it a SMART goal. And it's I think it's very helpful to get feedback on your goals, to help people to provide other feedback to each other, and just to iron out a little bit more of what you want to do this year, which helps you then actually plan things out a little bit better. And having like honest conversations about what we can actually achieve, how we can achieve it, and then figuring out what we need to do to support each other in that, I think goes a really long way in starting the year off right. Because if you can talk to your officers and say, how can I help you achieve your goals throughout the year? Like that's a really good way to start off on the right foot. And then, of course, you can create a plan to actually achieve everything that you want to achieve throughout the year. So, Nick, I'm going to lean on you a little bit here. But part of what we're trying to do with some more specific SMART goals is to have the Pearls goals, where every chapter has a list of 10 to 15 things that we want to achieve throughout the year. And it's not about being perfect. It is about just little things that we can do to progress our chapters. Um, and I know, Nick, this is a bigger thing for you, so I'll tee this up for you to talk a little bit more about it.
Yeah. So hopefully you all saw last biennium that we released kind of, or really last year, we released this idea of Crown Pearl goals for our chapters. And if you were at National Convention, or if you weren't, you might have heard me talk about the fact that we are going to have Crown Pearl goals all across the fraternity because we believe that strategic planning and setting SMART goals is one, a great way to have accountability, but it's two, kind of just a great way to measure progress and kind of check on the things we need to do. And so the Crown Pearl goals themselves were really developed to help chapters kind of figure out what are the kind of things that we expect out of you from a national organization to do as a chapter. And as Jack said, I love the motto striving for the highest. I mean, I just love it. It's a great thing. You can see my branding for this biennium. You can probably figure out I'm pretty obsessed with it. However, I always worry that when we have a motto like striving for the highest, we put too hard of expectations on ourselves, and we always say things have to be perfect. Kappa Psi should be a place where you can fail, and it should be a place where you can grow. And so that's why, like throughout the Crown Pearl Goals kind of program, we have the idea that striving for the highest means progress, not perfection. And so there's 15 goals that we've provided chapters for this next biennium, and we're just saying, hey, please hit 10 of these goals to be considered a Crown Pearl chapter. For this year, and then maybe do it again to be considered a Pearl chapter for those years. So these goals are divided into kind of three categories, which you can see up on screen. The ones I want to call out first are the ones in the middle, and these are our CHOPS goals or chapter operations. And these are simple things, right? Submit your chapter personnel report on time. When Opus rolled out the first year of last biennium, I had to put 40 chapters on probation because they didn't have their chapter personnel report completed. So get that on time. Your chapter won't be put on probation, and you'll get a Crown Pearl goal out of it. Submit your chapter curriculum calendar on time. So as you start your recruitment process, you should be submitting that curriculum calendar to your governors for review through our JOT form beforehand. That's one of your goals. Submit your initiate registration forms in on time. As you will see when I even talk about through one of the Strive for Five goals, as an organization, it's very important that we initiate people. And so really making sure that you are planning what your recruitment looks like and then reporting your initiates is very important to the organization. Next one, have at least one chapter member attend a Chop Shop in the fall. Congratulations. Everyone on this call right now is getting a Crown Pearl goal right now. These are resources that we've worked hard as a fraternity. We've studied best practices from a lot of our chapters, and we want to share these with you all so that you have the resources you need to succeed. And then the last one on the CHOPS goal is to attend a Chop Shop in the spring as well. Aside from that, we're also challenging our brothers to align with our national brand. So we will have the month of service coming up in September, and we want to celebrate service across Kappa Psi. You'll see a little bit more of that in the newsletter, but we want to see y'all highlighting your service projects. The work of Kappa Psi is done on the chapter level, not on the national level. So that is something we want to uplift and celebrate. We're going to ask you to participate in the month of musicianship, which this biennium is going to be asking, or this year is going to be asking your chapters to record a video of you all singing the fraternity song. So maybe dust out those song books right now if you have some work to do on that. Next in February, we will ask you all to attend one of the online Founder Circle leadership workshops for the month of leadership. This is a great resource. It's one of those resources we think help you all grow as brothers, so we're highly encouraging it. And then send a brother to district convention and submit your graduating senior report. Aside from those goals that we think are celebrating us as an organization and helping, you all kind of really move along the expectations we have as a chapter, we've also created some Strive for Five goals. So these are the goals that we really consider if you do these, you're really reaching above and beyond expectations and making your chapter stronger. The first one of those is to create a plan with your DOB and sponsor by October 15th for semester schools, November 15th, which I think I did see a quarter school here on the chat. Create that annual plan so you have like a calendar for the year. Next is to host an event that benefits all members of your band. And then next is to have one of your chapter officers get at least their level 1 certification in the Founder Circle. Finally, we're challenging all of our chapters to at least initiate 5 people. If 5 people is a walk in the park for your chapter and you initiated like 13 last year, keep initiating 13 people, please and thank you. We like having numbers as a chapter, but as long as they're high quality brothers. And then finally, create a budget for your chapter and share with your district council as well. I spent too much time on that, but I think these goals are really important because we think these are really good SMART goals that if you follow these and you're focused on recruitment by starting with your curriculum calendar, by targeting to initiate at least 5 people or at least as many as you did the year before, and then you're focusing on service and musicianship and leadership development in our organization, you're going to have a successful year.
All right, thanks, Nick. So just building off of I'm going to come back to accountability for a second. But so just building off the Crown Pearl goals here and the Strive for Five, timing is often key with this, where all of these deadlines are communicated in advance, and we encourage you to build that detailed plan of not just what you're doing for recruitment, but for the entire year, not just to have like some administrative burden on every chapter, but to help you all think through what things that you are doing, and to really be intentional about planning out your year so you can have a successful year. And so just having awareness of when all of these deadlines are and when you're doing different things throughout the year helps you see a little bit more of just where you need to flex and where you need to just be intentional about getting certain things across the finish line, right? Um, a big tip here, don't wait until the last minute to start, because some of these things can take a while, or maybe you run into some other obstacles. So just try to get a head start on it. Try to it can be helpful to have other people within your chapter help you out as well. But just getting ahead on paperwork and projects as well. Yeah, having a detailed chapter calendar. So you already have part of that through just creating a plan for the year, but having something that you can track against, making sure you know when certain events are coming up, when you need to start planning for certain things, when you need to start for different events, market those things, and just having a sense of just what we need to be doing within each week, within each month, will also help you a lot as president create agendas for all of your different chapter meetings. So that's another plus of having things mapped out a little bit. You can also use it to reflect on just how brothers are feeling throughout the year, how much like business is going through, how many projects are happening during different times of the year, and that could allow you to, when you have a little bit of downtime, perhaps take on an additional goal that you want to achieve that you haven't done as a chapter in the past, perhaps. And another big thing here is as you're creating plans and just for not just the entire year, but maybe looking at specific projects as well, starting in advance does give time for needed review or input from your sponsor or your DOB. So just again, getting ahead of things, just it's safer for a lot of different reasons, but getting input and having time to review if you do get significant input will be very helpful in just protecting your time throughout the year. And of course, proofread all the things that you do, especially for the paperwork. And again, just an outline here of just the content calendar, or an example content calendar for the year. I don't know if Nick or Kristen, you have more specific things to talk about here, or just showing for awareness.
I guess the one thing I'll say at the end of this presentation, we will share the chapter resource folder. The past two bienniums, which Kristen was a huge part of this, are chapter operations committee, which is now being rolled up a little bit into membership and chapter support and leadership and development. Spent a lot of time making these content calendars for you all. So like if you're a president and you're like, what are the things I need to do? Go to the chapter resource folder. Like I said, the link will be shared at the end of this presentation, and use that to guide yourself through things you have to do throughout the year. These are resources that we've made for you all to hopefully make your life easier. So yeah.
Mhm. Yep. And we have time later as well to talk about this a little bit more in detail. Before moving on to the last section or next section, just want to talk about accountability for a second. I know we had teed it up earlier. But I just want to hear from some people. Again, you can put in the chat, like, what does accountability mean to you? What are some ways that you can show it as a chapter president, as a brother? Like, what does accountability look like as a brother of this fraternity? Yeah, could be giving opportunities to get feedback and to hear like what brothers are thinking. Owning up to mistakes or shortcomings, that's a huge one. And none of us are perfect, right? Striving for your highest, not striving for perfection, right? Being honest with the chapter and with issues, yeah, and where you need help. Showing where you need help is going to be huge, right? Because again, we all do need help at different times, and having the courage to say that is going to help everybody move forward together. Communicating honestly and effectively, yeah, absolutely. So thank you all for sharing all these things. Just a little bit back to just what's on the slide. Oh, what's on the slide here? So the premise here is that you can't expect your chapter to show up if you don't show up. If you are not doing the things that you need to be doing as president, it gives other people a free pass to not do the things that they need to be doing just in their roles or just as a brother. Like if like we being president, you obviously you have a role and a title, but it's also a lot of leading by example, and often your example shines brighter because you do have a title. If you're doing the things that you need to be doing, it's more likely that people around you are going to be doing the same. If you're showing up to meetings prepared and on time, and you're just being very candid about when you do need help and being clear and honest with the people around you, other people are probably going to pick up on that as well. But if you're not doing that, people will probably follow that as well. And so accountability does, it is something that is owned by all of us, but it does start with you in a lot of ways. So again, just be candid, be clear and honest with what's going on with you. Be open to make mistakes and own up to them. And also, yeah, having conversations about just how to have feedback. Um, how do you want to get it? How do you want to give it? And just talking with your exec board and your officers and your chapter about like what this really does look like, and having those clear expectation conversations go a long way. All right. So shifting ahead, um, passing over, Nick, I'll give you the floor back again, just on building chapter culture.
Perfect. Thank you, Jack.
Mhm.
Um, So in this section, we're going to cover a couple of things, and I'll probably ask questions in a slightly different order than Jack will ask them. But we're going to focus on really building chapter culture and kind of the ideas of what can be done to have efficient meetings, to develop a strong officer team, and create a great chapter culture. That being said, before we get too deep into this, Jack, if you would move to the next slide for me. I want to ask, and then one more, just one. Uh, this is always the awkward thing about screen share. A question to you all in the chat. What do you all think the true power of a chapter president is, or where does a chapter president derive their most authority? This is something I think we do not talk about enough as a fraternity, and it's actually very important when it comes to y'all being chapter president. So if y'all want to put it in the chat, if y'all want to come off mute, please do so, but I will give some seconds of suspense building. The brothers and the officers they serve, being a voice between brothers and other band members, people who voted you in, leading by example. All these are really good answers. It's not what I want to go for on this slide, but you're absolutely right. Our fraternity has an oath of office and an oath of support, right? And we say in that oath of office that we will support the current administration in their work. We have chosen to delegate this authority to a bunch of people themselves. Yeah, definitely you derive your authority from so I will reword this question probably for the next one, but you derive your authority from the people you serve. But I guess maybe asked another way, what is the true power of the president? How can a president lead their chapter? It is going to be the most beige answer when I reveal it. Don't you worry. Being encouraging with new ideas and being efficient, yep. Making the chapter a welcoming place, absolutely. Setting the standard goals and ultimately leading by example. I want to bounce off that one a little bit to where I was going. So, Jack, if you don't mind, you can put a bunch of these in. So, the true power of the president is the ability to call meetings, set agendas, and set the order of business. Um, this might seem like something really boring, but by Robert's rules, by our national constitution, and I dare say by your chapter constitutions, the ultimate authority you are given is that you can call meetings, set agendas, and set the order of business. And this has a couple of consequences. First and foremost, this means that when you want to discuss an action item as a chapter, you can put that on the agenda for discussion. We see this happen at national convention, right? My national convention in 2 years, we are going to be discussing changes to the ritual. One of those separate sessions is going to be completely devoted to do we, and if so, how do we change our ritual? I'm allowed to do that because the moratorium lifts every 10 years on our ritual, but that is just one of those things. Like, as national president, I get to set that as one of my agenda items. I will probably deprioritize constitutional changes because we will not have time to do a bunch of stuff and have some of those deep conversations when we're already having to provides our ritual. Same thing. If you all want to discuss a fundraiser or changing the way your chapter approaches things or doing a new service project, you as the chapter president has that ability to say, we're going to have a meeting at this time. This is going to be what's on the agenda, and we're going to talk about this first. You get to drive where your chapter is going based off how you set agendas. And the other thing too, if a president doesn't want to entertain emotion, right? If someone comes up to you and says, "Hey, Jack, I want to completely rewrite our chapter constitution this year," you can be like, "I'm not going to entertain that in business." And the magic thing about being a president, because you have been voted on by your brothers and we have installed that power into you, you don't have to completely rewrite the constitution. So going to what was said in the chat, you get to set the standard goals and ultimately lead by example, but you're setting the standard for what you want to discuss in your chapter meetings. This is a big thing, right? In the national world of fraternity, we often say that the VPME has the most power because they have a vote and they're allowed to do things. As national president, I only have a vote in tiebreakers, right? So I can't even vote to move something forward, but I can say what we are going to discuss in a meeting. And so I just want to kind of really remind you all, if you take nothing away from this meeting tonight, remember that your most effective power is um, um, weirdly set by agendas because you get to set them. And to answer Kayla's question, like obviously brothers can present ideas, they can talk outside of chapters and whatnot, but this power is really what do you bring forward to official chapter business? So next slide. I'm very passionate about that point because that point really leads into kind of a bunch of the big ideas behind holding effective meetings. And so my question for you all before I dive into this is what does an effective meeting look like to you all? Transition one bullet point, Jack. Yeah. Oh, the slide order changed. Oh, never mind. Keep going, Jack. I will. Sorry, this is my fault. So holding effective meetings. Spend your time wisely and be direct with each other. So first and foremost, decide how frequently you will meet as a chapter. I will tell you for the National Council, we meet every 3 weeks. Obviously, chapters, you probably meet weekly, a little bit more often, but I'm going to say this, chapters don't need to meet every week. Some of our larger chapters, they meet every other week, and then their committees meet on the off weeks. So you all get to decide, and especially you as chapter president with your authority um, to um, determine when meetings are going to be or call meetings, get to decide how frequently you will meet, and then you get to create agendas. Remember that creating agendas is where the chair derives their most authority from. So when committees have a meeting, the chair of that committee has been delegated the authority to set that agenda. They might have charges from your president, but creating agendas is a stupid power that's really powerful. Next point. Some chapters will utilize executive committees. If your chapter's smaller, probably on the size like 15 to 20, first off, that's not a small chapter, that's an average size chapter, but you might not need an executive committee. But sometimes you might think about having your kind of top 5 officers, your president, your VPM, your VPS, your secretary, your treasurer, whatever it is for your chapter, um, really meet kind of outside of regular meetings to debrief on projects and help set that agenda for the next meeting itself. Next one. Your chapter, when your chapter meets, the big thing to do in these chapter meetings are to share reports, right? If you had a committee that met, your chapter should be debriefing their report. They should be taking votes. And ideally, throughout the chapter, you should be providing recognition and feedback for those things that have gotten done well words. And then finally, I think this is like one of the most important points here, but don't be afraid to change things. I have been a sponsor of the Xi chapter for 10 years. And the one thing I can tell you is most students think it takes 4 years for their chapter culture to change. Your chapter culture is actually probably changing every 2 to 3 months based off where you are in the year, what your band programming looks like, what current service offerings you're looking like. You can make adjustments throughout the years to your meetings, to how you're executing them. You have to do what works best for you. But the big thing we recommend, next sub bullet point, is to still always have a general structure to keep things orderly. But be aware of adding too many rules and procedures to your meetings because that's just going to bloat things down. So, yeah. Now for my question to you all on the next slide is, in your opinion, what does an effective meeting look like to you all? Toss in the chat, come off mute, whatever it is.
I think it's when everybody leaves the meeting knowing what their next steps are to help us progress towards the project.
I absolutely love that, Nicholas. I think so. Professionally, I am a senior researcher and group manager. I study plastics for a living at the National Renewable Energy Lab in Golden, and I am in every meeting saying, "Okay, what are our action items to follow up on?" So I think that hits the nail on the head of things I love to see out of a good meeting is recapping at the end of the meeting. It's like, okay, next week we have a service project. Next week dues are due. Yes, I love what Kayla said. Not every officer report needs to turn into a discussion. Um, we have entrusted our officers to do the work, and so you have to empower them to do that. And I love what Sierra said, seeing active participation from everyone. Absolutely. Everyone leaving having their questions answered. Yes, you want people to feel involved and bought into your chapter, so that like if people don't feel like you're paying attention to them, they might not actually feel like they're part of the chapter. Sweet. I love all that. Rolling right along, if you do not mind, Mr. Gornick. So, something that a lot of our chapters don't often use a lot, um, is to build strong committees. Committees are a great way to take out kind of like how I think it was Kayla, right? Not every officer report needs to turn into discussion. Same thing with not every committee report does, right? Committees are a great way to kind of take some of that work offline from a chapter meeting, flush out some ideas, and then bring them back to a chapter. But because of that, they're kind of this really interesting balancing act, if you will. So, just going through some of the bullets one by one, if you do not mind, Jack. The first is to, when you look at committees, look at your brothers and play off each brother's strengths and consider how well committee members can complement each other. Kristen and I are actually doing this right now on the national stage as we flesh out our national committees. And we're trying to make sure that we have representation from the wide diversity of our fraternity. We're trying to make sure we have representation from small schools, medium schools, large schools, HBCUs, PWIs, quarter schools, LMNOPs across the districts, all those things across the board. You want to make sure that you have a committee that one can work well together. Don't put two people who might cause a lot of chaos in the same room, but two that actually can provide ideas to complement each other and really represent the diversity of your chapter. So even though your chapter might just be 10 to 15 members, you probably have a bunch of small groups with in that chapter that represent different interests within your home chapter itself. The next is to balance the wants of chapter members with the needs of each committee, right? If you as a chapter, want to have a flagship service project, you should have a flagship, committee that might be working on that service project. However, if if there's something that your chapter said we're going to do a small ensemble concert but no one in your chapter is interested in that, you might not have a need for a committee on that or to execute that itself. So really it's this balancing act of like you need to use committees most effectively. Within the fraternity we have this idea called chapterology, which is kind of what sizes we recommend, well, how many committees we recommend for different chapters. And when a chapter is less than 10 members, we really just recommend ad hoc committees to execute certain projects. Versus when a chapter is like Delta, where it's over 100 members, we recommend having committees that apply for national awards, that do a bunch of things to get more people involved. Um, Next, your committee members, they're typically either assigned for a semester or a year. Like we said with pivoting your chapter, as far as how often you have meetings, don't be afraid to reassign during the school year. In fact, nationally, we're going to do this. We're moving to a sprint-based model. We're going to just assign people for goals, and then we'll allow people to come in and out of committees as it works for their lives. Committees might work for me in the fall semester because I don't have class at Friday on 3, but in the spring semester, I have a 4-hour class from 1 to 5. So the service committee doesn't work for me. So please do not be afraid to reassign committees as needed. And then I've already said this one before, but not every chapter needs committees. So assess if they're going to be something that's good for you. You also don't need 3 committees. You don't need 5 committees. Whatever works best for your chapter. Ad hoc committees work great. That is one of those other powers of a president is as a president, you can assign as many ad hoc committees as you want. So maybe you do have an ad hoc committee to redo the chapter constitution because you've realized it's clunky. That works great. They do that project. They work for 8 weeks. They flush it out. Committee's done. How you use committees is really determined to what the needs of your chapter are. So once we kind of have the idea of the tools that you all have in your tool belt, right? As a president, you get to set agendas, you get to figure out how to have effective meetings, how often those meetings work, you get to decide if you have committees or not. Then it really comes down to strategic planning for your chapter more broadly. And so really your strategic plan as a chapter is thinking about how do all your chapter officers' individual goals feed into your chapter's larger plan. So big thing is, as a chapter, you should really decide, next bullet point, on what your 2 to 3 priorities are for a year. Um, you know, some ones that I want to throw out, it's going to be on a future slide, but recruitment, flagship service project, flagship fundraising project. You can have more goals than that, but you need to determine where you're going to start and what's most important to you. The next is to consider what your strengths and weaknesses are as a chapter and really use those to identify kind of what goals you should have and what work you should be doing. And then if you're kind of struggling with what to do, you should really refer back to our organization's missions and purposes and understand how do your chapter priorities align with them. You know, service, brotherhood, musicianship, leadership, celebration. Are you doing something that really reflects that in your chapter? Are you uplifting musicianship in your chapter? Are you honoring outstanding band members? Do you have flagship service projects? Are you participating in national fraternity programming to help develop your chapter officers as leaders? If you need inspirations for goals, that brand is a great place to start. And then finally, big one, create opportunities to evaluate your progress and pivot as needed. You should always be talking about your goals in every meeting. And if you aren't hitting those goals, you should assess why you might not be hitting those goals, which really kind of brings us to our next slide on a great tool that everyone should be aware of, and it's called SWOT analysis. So SWOT is another acronym like SMART goals are, and what it stands for is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. A great activity for you all to do with your chapter at some point during the year, but maybe at the top of the year when you're figuring out your goals, is to outline what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are, right? Your strengths might be we're a fairly, large chapter, so that means we have a lot of people power to get work done. But on the flip side of that token, you might have a weakness as a chapter saying, but since we're a large chapter, we're not the best at coordinating. From that weakness, you might derive a new opportunity. Being like, okay, well, if we aren't the best at coordinating as a large chapter, maybe we need to figure out a new way to do communication. I loved what Nicholas said because I feel that on a deep and spiritual level with work and with Kappa Kappa Psi, that sometimes we have too many channels of communication, right? So that could be a great way to streamline this to figure all this out. Conversely, maybe if you're a smaller chapter, your strengths are like, look, we're a small knit group of people. We know how to get in touch with each other and we can assemble fast and we can get work done. The weaknesses are we don't have enough people power to do some of the bigger things we would want to do. Like we want to host a $2,000 fundraiser this year for buying a new drum major stand or something like that. But we don't have enough people to man a booth to whatever it is. So our opportunities would be to recruit people. I've spent a lot of time talking about the SWO of the SWOT analysis, but not a lot about the T, but I do want to hit on that last. The T is the threats. Threats are things you can't control. I think this is one of the most important things about SWOT analysis because when you're doing SWOT analysis, you should be like, okay, what are the things I can't control? I can't control what my university sets tuition to be. I can't control how many people you might influence this, but how many people my college band program is able to recruit into band, which affects my recruitment numbers. I can't control state funding. I think threats, especially in today's age, are very important to recognize because they're the things that you have to let go of what you can't control, but realize it might influence the rest of your life or the rest of your work, right? As national president of this fraternity, let's just be honest. I cannot control inflation or tariffs. I can't do that as a normal person anyway. I realize that might affect our business model, though, as an organization. So it's something I need to be aware of. But for my own mental well being, I need to let go of it. And so when it comes to your chapters, there's things you are not going to be able to control, like that other, that one faculty in the program, whatever it is. That is might be a threat to your organization. I never want to say faculty members are threats to the organization, but it's one of those things. You have to let go of it as being something you can't control and just something that you're aware of as you figure out what your strengths and weaknesses are and how those identify where your opportunities are as a chapter. Next slide. So strategic planning. For you all, I want you all to toss in the chat, what are some good priorities for your chapter in a given year or maybe even this year? Also, Jack, in defense of my 8 o'clock end time, I am 2 hours behind the East Coast, so
Okay, that's fair. I forgot about that.
one great one here, multiple great ones. Planning our events with plenty of time. I have a big belief when it comes to giving presentations that I will never edit the presentation on the day I give it. I have that same belief when it comes to planning my week. I do not add in new events to my week because I want to make sure I'm ready for them. So absolutely there. Planning financially for multiple years. I love that, Christopher. Like thinking beyond just this current year, right? You're coming from a new chapter, even though I know you have experience from previous chapter. Like, how can you make sure that bank account has enough money for a rainy day? Um, Finding your Kappa Kappa Y, absolutely. Remind, why do people care about this organization? That might be a focus on brotherhood type things, or even just maybe it's finding more avenues in our leadership development pathways to give people the resources they might need to succeed. Absolutely. Making sure that people can staff your service projects. I did a lot of truck loading at 8 a.m. Sierra, if that's how you pronounce your name, go ahead.
So when I first joined Kappa Kappa Psi, it always had like a really bad name.
Mhm.
And even now with newer members, they are a bit hesitant about joining because of what they heard. Our One of our biggest priorities is giving Kappa Kappa Psi its name back, like as a wonderful musical fraternity that's for everyone, not just music majors.
I absolutely Oh, a little bit of feedback, but I absolutely love that. I will say that's when I became president of my chapter back 16 years ago. That was one of the big challenges that Ada Beta faced. We had a poor reputation in the band. We were not music majors; we were all engineers. But one of our goals was to improve that, and it was actually kind of focusing on recruitment. And through that, we came up with the idea of friends first, then brothers. We should make friends with people in the band. We should not try to recruit everyone in the band because that might not come across the best. But if we actually have personal connections with people, it's a lot harder for them to talk bad about the chapter. And that actually ended up working out really well for us. A bunch of these are really great. I mean, Jack, I think what you call out is really huge. Chapters often struggle with, getting individuals to participate. I will say if you want to reach out to CFRs, Mason has thought about this a lot. He would love to be a thought partner with you in this because having requirements doesn't always drive people in there. Yes, I love to hitting the crown pearl goals. Um, I love all these. Just because I know we want to save plenty of time for Q&A and I've run over. Three big ones that I always think, for your chapter, you should make sure you're considering is first recruiting, right? This might be reflected from my time when I was an active and we were about 12 members and we wanted to make sure that we were around after I graduated. Focus on your recruiting. Five is a perfect target number for the year. More is also fine or better. Next is a flagship service project. Making sure you execute your service projects well. So I think it was Elisa in the chat. I can't remember up there, but or Alyssa talked about the idea that they have a set service project. So making sure you do your work well is so important because that is why your band directors and your sponsors love you. And then a flagship fundraising project. This maybe goes to what Christopher was saying. Making sure you have money in the bank that you can grow your chapter and continue to, participate in offerings. All these are fantastic. Next slide. So once you have, you have the tools in your hand, you can set a meetings, you can set agendas, but and you have goals, you now have to figure out how to delegate things. The big thing is, as chapter presidents, we always want to be superheroes. I'm this way as a national president. I got a request across my desk today. I was like, well, looks like I'm going to stay up a little late tonight to make sure we have a fall mailer. Long story there, but that's like where I am tonight. I know I can ask for help if I need it. And so please remember, one, to ask for help, but two, to recognize those people who help you. So just going through a couple of these bullets real quick. First off, you do not need to prove yourself. You've already been initiated as a brother of this fraternity, and you have been voted as your chapter president. You are worthy of that title, and you are worthy of the title. You're worthy to serve as president, worthy of the title of brother, worthy to serve as your chapter president. Be proactive about sharing your workload, and don't try to take it on just because you think that's going to make yourself look better. When delegating, make sure you consider every brother's strength and weakness. I will always tell a story about a brother I knew at Tech when we hosted district convention, and he was very passionate about making the delegate signs when we hosted district convention. That was his strength. He loved papercraft, and he did it, and he did a damn good job at it. That was his strength, and it was something that he was passionate about, right? So maybe the one way I would add to this bullet point is consider each brother's strengths, weaknesses, and passions, and try to do all those things. The next one is, I think, probably the most important here. Be a partner, not a micromanager. You can read the rest of this bullet point, but I'm just going to say something that I've learned from the workforce. People are going to do things differently than you will do them. Full stop. Sometimes it's not going to be up to the quality or up to your expectations, and that's when you get feedback. But a lot of times the magic will happen because they will do it different, and it will be different, but it might be better. So you have to completely embrace that people will do things different than you, and that is okay. And then finally, the most important bullet point there is on here, but recognition comes in many forms, and you need to remember to say thank you for people. I think one of the things I often think about is recognition is often a good form of feedback, and it should be given often, right? I haven't called Kristen as much out in this one as I did in the previous session, but I love that she's already tossing in all the links, being like, here's what you need here, here's what you need here. I love that her and Jack are being so proactive in the chat, interacting with you all and talking with you all. That is one way to give out recognition, right? I literally just said, I'm thankful for these people doing this. I think the words I'm thankful for blank for doing blank are almost superpowers themselves. So please build time into your meetings to share praise. I think the best way to end a meeting is by giving out thank yous to people. If you've ever seen me give a talk in the fraternity, I actually intentionally always end my talks by thanking everyone for their time and thanking them for their service to the college bands. Um, Making sure you are intentional about recognition. It doesn't have to be a lot. It can be just a simple call out. Really helps build a strong culture. Having a brother of a week, absolutely. I love all those things. Jamie, big call out there as well. Especially calling out what's done between meetings, not just what's done in meetings. Next slide. So how do we stay motivated? It's not always easy. But I think we'll just toss up a bunch of these ones because I think we've already answered this. Just remember, work together to refine your goals throughout the year. Don't be afraid to pivot. Do what we talked about previously. Express appreciation for each other as brothers and as people. Hold each other accountable. Remember, if you don't show up, others won't show up, and aim to get it right instead of being right. Reflect on every project, discuss what went well, what should be continued, and what needs to change. And remember, if you feel like your chapter is struggling, review what your attendance looks like, review what participation looks like, review what ways you're fostering brotherhood, and review the concepts of tradition versus progress. I know I went through that one quick, but I think we got a lot of those concepts sprinkled throughout the other ones that I don't want to belabor too much on this slide. I will turn it back to Jack to talk quickly through some sponsored DOB chapter and university relations.
I will talk quickly. So just from personal experience, I was never a chapter president. I was just district president. And one of the things that I think was one of the most difficult, but also most beneficial to me in that role was how many different lines of communication you're trying to keep open at all times. I was always talking with all of the other district officers and governors, talking with other districts, talking with all of the chapters, talking with the national leadership. And as a chapter president, like you have similarly a lot of different people that you're always trying to engage with, and it's really important to try to keep up with a lot of these interactions. And some of the main ones that we're going to talk about here, like obviously you need to be talking to your chapter. You need to have open lines of communication with all your officers, in particular the exec board, and also just checking in on other people throughout the chapter as well. But we're also going to talk about sponsor and DOB and university relationships a little bit here too. And so maintaining open lines with your sponsor and director of bands are really important because they're there to give you guidance and feedback. And also they're the ones that are often signing off on a lot of things too. So they need to be kept in the loop to know what the chapter is doing, where they need to lean in for support. And so it's very helpful to have just a couple of standing meetings with them, and also just making sure that you have a very impactful one at the beginning of the year and perhaps like halfway through to check in just holistically as where the chapter is going. Um, but it is a big part of your responsibilities to keep them in the loop and to get their feedback on just the things that you're doing as a chapter. And also they're very busy people, so just be mindful of their time as well and just bring them in where it's important. You can also just find that interaction, how that relationship should work with however they want it to work. Some sponsors and DOBs are more involved than others, and that's okay. And they're also your first line of support for a lot of different things, right? Particularly when you have issues within your chapter, they are going to be oftentimes a lot closer to those issues than perhaps members of the national leadership team, because they're not necessarily going to know every brother in your chapter and the people that are having interpersonal conflicts. So having that avenue to really talk about some issues that are facing the chapter is a great place to start. Second, we've talked a little bit about officer and chapter relationships, but there is a difference between working and professional relationships. Hopefully, both of those overlap more often than not within the chapter, but still need to understand that your role as president is setting the agendas and talking about business oftentimes. So doing so in a professional way is important, but also like maintaining strong relationships with the people that you're interacting with, making sure that people feel heard and understood, trying to build trust and not just shutting them down, and also just to continue to have feedback that is truly impactful. My computer, there we go, finally went. And lastly, university relationships. So schools all have different resources that are available to chapters. Nick, I'm sure you can touch on this more as a past sponsor, but make sure that your chapter is registered as a student organization. You'll get support through that avenue. Review other requirements for what you need to do to take in members, improve projects, set attendance, right? And then just utilize all the resources that are available to you on campus. And yeah, just I'll turn back to Nick if you have anything to add here because you're closer to this than I am.
Yeah, I think the big thing to note is like the first bullet point's very important. So I think Jamie, the Alpha Iota chapter, is the one that sticks out to me because this happened a lot when I was governor. Not every chapter can be a registered student organization, especially since we like require that our membership comes exclusively from bands. If you can register as a student organization, you might get a lot of resources, but your university also might have a lot of weird requirements, such as requiring that banking has to go through the university and that you could lose all your money at the end of the year. So definitely when it comes to being a student organization, if you have to do it, make sure you do it because it might end up with a headache down the road. If you have the option to do it, make sure it's a beneficial relationship for your chapter itself. Our HBCUs are really where that second policy is most reflected. HBCUs have very strict timelines for how membership intake looks, especially. So make sure you're following your university guidelines there. Across the board, make sure you're following your university guidelines. Some universities have special rules about blindfolds that they can't be used at all during rituals. If you are one of those universities, I don't know how you'll find that information out, but make sure you're following your university guidelines first because as a fraternity, we say we always follow university guidelines. So I think that's the big one. So make sure you're following your university rules, and then if they will give you free money, make sure you're getting that free money.
All right, last section here.
Yeah, I will close this out real quick with some of the national expectations themselves. So next slide. So big one. You are, as chapter president, you are the liaison between the national fraternity and a chapter. It's already great to see you here tonight. You already get some of that idea. Um, So just some big things that we expect of you all. First and foremost, review the risk management policies annually with your chapter. This is what it means when people go into Opus and check off on their CPRs that they reviewed this, is that you've talked about this as a chapter itself. The president's content calendar is really great because it kind of reminds you as your obligations. It will remind you of when you have to turn in your reports, such as the CPR, the fall activity report, and the spring activity report, and will give you some good timelines on when making sure you're going to be ready to go. We are updating the national website. I will be honest, I know the national website is not the best resource. I hope by the end of the fall it looks a little better. And by the end of the biennium, it looks a lot better. But please review the national website. That being said, I'm honestly going to communicate a lot with you all, either through the emails of from the desk of the national president, or honestly, we always post those on Instagram as well. We are currently in talks about do we actually pursue a national Discord or not. It's kind of scary. So there might be future communication platforms out there, but things there. But the big thing is, as chapter president, you serve as the official representative of your chapter. You oversee your chapter meetings, you set those agendas, and you oversee financial transactions. And then you prepare the reports and you give guidance to your chapter committees. Opus deadlines. Opus does not, I asked this joke in the last one. Opus is not an acronym for anything. It is just our online reporting portal. I thought it was online portal and user system. Nope, it's just called Opus. But Opus is the main platform where you will do all this stuff through. So your chapter personnel reports and dues, they're due on September 1st for um, semester schools and October 1st for quarter schools. That being said, they are not late until September 30th or November 15th. That was a change made at NatCon, especially after strong feedback from our quarter schools. But big thing is we're saying they're due on September 1st, so we don't have everyone starting them on September 28th. Because I can also tell you, as VPME last year, 70% of their chapters started their paperwork after September 25th. We want them to get started earlier, which is why the deadline's written this way. If you get your report done by September 15th, you will still be considered an early bird award as well. Um, Great question from Juan. The report opens up August 15th. So on Friday, you can start filling out your chapter personnel report. Your fall activity reports will be due December 1st with sponsor and DOB signature, and your spring activity reports will be due June 1st. You can work on these throughout the year. Those questions are always available. So if you just want to have a Google Doc that has those questions and you start typing on events while you do them, it will make your life easier. Your graduating senior form, really accepted on a rolling basis, but due mostly on December 1st and June 1st. I will say, if you want to help us drive dues down as a national organization, fill out that graduating senior form. Our insurance estimates are based off our best guess of membership, which for us, it's our CPR numbers plus our initiate numbers minus our graduating seniors. We always underreport the graduating seniors because we don't have that data set complete. So help us lower dues by turning in the graduating senior form. After you have your elections, whenever that is, please turn in your chapter officer form. And then the last, not last three, membership and candidate registration form. This is due within 7 days following first degree, and your initiate form is due within 30 days following third degree. Big note, because I don't think it's on any of the next slides, is that your is that your membership candidate form has to be approved and done before you can start your initiate registration form. And before we approve your membership candidate registration form, you have to turn in a curriculum calendar. So make sure you're following the steps on those. You might delegate a lot of that work to your VPM, but remember, curriculum calendar, MCR, IRF. We have had IRFs get late because people didn't start the other paperwork, and that held it up a lot. Next slide. I already talked about this a lot. Chapter personnel report. It's due September 1st, late after September 30th, in which a 10% late fee will apply itself. Remember, we updated dues at National Convention, so they are $145 per brother, and the chapter fee is $100 per chapter. Next slide. Submitting payments, there are multiple ways to submit payments. Your form must have all your approvals before you can make a payment, and we will credit to your accounts. You can always mail check or money order. Personally, I've never sent a money order in my life, so I'm assuming most of y'all don't know how to send a money order either. If you do, you have more skills than I have. But you can send those to our PO box in Stillwater. You can always call HQ to pay with a credit card, or you can go to kksci.org/form-payment-gateway, and you can pay on there as well. Next slide. Chapter personnel update. If there's ever points throughout the year where you have a member change status, or whatever it is, you can fill out the chapter personnel update. So let's say someone comes from inactive and wants to be active again, you can use this form to do it. Let's say someone goes from active to conditional, you can use this form to do it. Do this throughout the year whenever someone has a status change. Next slide. Fall activity report. I think I already hit this, but your fall activity report should cover all the activities from May 1st through November 1st. It should talk about the demographics of your band, and it's due December 1st and requires sponsor and DO pre-approval. I think the big thing about this award, if you are a chapter president who says, I want my chapter to be nominated as one of the chapter finalists for this next biennium, make sure you're getting all your reports in on time. I will be honest with you all. We disqualify 80% of chapters because they miss one or two of their reports. If you want to be in consideration of chapter leadership finalist, one of the best things you can do is get all your reports in on time. We recommend getting this one done before Thanksgiving. And then finally, tips and tricks. If you're having issues with Opus, make sure it says .kkytbs at the end of your login name. If your band director is having issues with Opus, make sure it says .kkytbs at the end of their login name. Kristen linked a bunch of Opus training videos. As we said before, throughout the year, keep track of the things that you will put in your report so you're not working on them frantically the night before Thanksgiving break so you can get it out to your sponsor or DOB. And also make sure you are not taking on everything on your own. You have an officer team to help you. Your VPM can probably help with those numbers as far as band numbers go. Your treasurer can help with fundraising numbers. Make sure you're working with your team to get it done. So finally, moving into a little bit more of the chapter support. I will say this until the day I am done being on national leadership. The magic thing about Kappa Kappa Psi is that our work is done on the chapter level. It's not done on the national level. I am no longer out here at 8 a.m. moving instruments across campus. That is what you all are doing. You are enabling the work of Kappa Kappa Psi to be done. You are enabling the work of our fraternity to be done, and you're enabling the advancement of the college band movement. As an organization, districts and nationals, even though Aaron Moore hates when we call it nationals, are here to support you. If you ever need any help, reach out to your district officers or your district governors. Feel free to reach out to anyone on the National Council, Board of Trustees, or Alumni Association Board of Directors. I respond to my email pretty quickly, so does Mark Renault, your VPME. We are here to help you. Those first two bullet points, we are not paid. I'm not paid by the fraternity to do this. I just love Kappa Kappa Psi that much that I spend multiple hours a week working on this stuff. We do have some paid staff, though. That's actually what a majority of your dues go to is paid staff. So please, if you have problems with any of these CPRs, call up HQ, reach out to them. Your chapter field representatives, they're always here to talk to you as a chapter. So if you need help with something on a chapter, cfr@kksi.org, email them, and I'm sure they will email you back and be willing to set up an office hour immediately. And then finally, like we'd love to see you all at our district and national conventions. We're still waiting on some details for NED and SED to be finalized out. We know where the rest of our conventions are. Their dates have been published. We know where national convention is going to be in 2 years. Try to figure out how to get to those events because one, I can guarantee you it will be a time that's full of brotherhood. It will feel like a family reunion in the best way possible. I personally did not like some of my actual family reunions. I love Cap Cap Psi conventions though. Find out a way to figure out how you can get there to make sure your voice is heard so we can hear what you all need as chapters and we can focus the national organization on developing those. Speaking of district and national conventions, you've had me and Jack on the line. We are both Founder Circle speakers. The Founder Circle is a program that you will see grow this biennium, and it's one of the things I am most passionate about because I think it's one of the ways that we give resources to our brothers to succeed. You will see a lot of this come out this biennium. I highly suggest you engage in this programming because it's going to give you a leg up once you graduate from college itself. Within the Founder Circle, just toss all the bullet points up here, Jack, if you don't mind. There are modules to help you grow as an individual leader, a group leader, and a visionary leader. And within each module, there's 5 to 6 key concepts that you will address. There's a lot of resources in the Founder Circle. The Founder Circle is really a 2-part program. One of the parts is independent reading and reflection on who you think you are as a leader. So for like level 1, it's going to be like, what are your values? How are you aware of them? Who are you as a person? And when you go to district convention, you might see a talk by someone like Jack that it really addresses who are you and how can you have these discussions with others people. So it's a great way to develop as a leader, and something that we suggest you engage in and possibly even have more of your chapter engage in as well. Next slide. Finally, maybe finally, yes, finally, the chapter resource folder is shown up here on screen and linked in the chat. I would click on the link on the chat. I would bookmark this. When I had Ari and Mason start as CFRs, I thought one of the best ways that they could train themselves was to go through and compile all the fraternity resources into one place. So like I said, our website needs some work. This chapter resources folder has every national resource that we've made at your fingertips. There's a folder for president, which will link you to things like those content calendars we talked about today. There's a folder for vice president membership, which will link you to things like the road to wisdom, but it will also give you starting slide templates for every single road to wisdom lesson so that you don't have to do this on your own. You can also, if you want to hear me talk or Jack talk again, I personally don't like the sound of my voice, but Jack has a more melodious voice than I do. You can go listen to us because these calls will also be tossed up in there and also on KKSI TV a little bit later. But they also have resources about being engaged at the district and national level, aligning with our national brand, officer training, and fostering wellness within your chapter. I think that brings us to the end of our presentation. So first off, thank you to Kristen for organizing all these. You are a superhero, demonstrating positive recognition, but I love all the work that you've done with this, and I still look forward to our partnership the next few years. Jack, thank you for volunteering some of your time Monday night. But most importantly, like I say, I end every talk with, thank you all to being here tonight. It's amazing to have 18 of y'all here trying to better your chapter and be better leaders. I promise you that as a national council and a national organization, we are devoted to you all and making your chapters better. So please always feel free to reach out with any questions, comments, concerns that you may have. You can email our new leadership development at kksi.org email, or you can come to one of our upcoming sessions. If you want to hear us talk again, I'm sure I will say things differently during the next session. Feel free to come to the next president session on Wednesday. Maybe you suggest your treasurer comes to the session, or you want to learn more about your finances and best practices there. We have a session next Tuesday for treasurer, and I will not be at the VPM session. It is my birthday, but we'll be having the VPM session next Thursday as well. Finally, communicators, these are like your secretaries, your historians, things like that. We'll be having a session on 8/25 for them, and then we'll be closing it out with service chairs right before the month of service on 8/27. So feel free to go to any of these sessions. Recordings will be up afterwards as well, but we think you get a little bit more by being able to interact with us. Jack, do you have any last notes?
No, I mean, we'll talk about a lot of the same things on Wednesday, so I don't know if you need to come back, but encourage people to come back if you want.
We will stay around for questions for about the next, I don't know, until y'all stop asking questions. But Kristen, do you have any other notes either?
No, just thanks everyone for being here. Excited to dive into some questions if you have them. Or if you just want to share something that really stuck out to you about tonight's presentation, we're always trying to learn too at the committee level. So if there's something that really stuck out or you wish we spent more time on, I'd love to know that too.